Now that we have our building blocks in place, we need to talk about on-bar update. We need to probably talk some more about NinjaTrader basic terms. Now, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to probably refer back to the help guide. So if I go to the control center, and there at the very end, we've got help, very second thing, help guide. It brings up NinjaTrader's help guide. If you're just starting off, this is going to be your Bible. Okay, so where would I go from here? I look down the list. We have to read. We have to be able to read. I mean, there are only brief sentences, brief. As we scroll down, NinjaScript. Oh, what's in here? Okay, best practices. Educational resources. That sounds good. Oh my. And then we scroll down and add-on development, C# methods. Oh, I talked about that earlier. Tick replay. Oh, we talked about that. Developing indicators. Isn't that what we're doing right now? Developing indicators. Okay, advanced, intermediate. Intermediate sounds better. Oh, your intermediate, your own SMA. Well, how about that? Now, what we were just doing? I didn't know that was here. So I click on that. Notice how it's all interactive. So intermediate, your own SMA overview. Setup. The first step in creating your new indicator in the wizard. Oh, it's stepping you through the wizard, just like I just did. My explanations are probably going to be better for you than to have to read this, but I wish I would have known this was here. Adding events. See, we went through all of this, entering our calculation logic, and this is exactly where we're at right now. So we're in the on-bar update. Oh man, this worked out perfect. We're in the on-bar update, entering calculation logic. Okay, are there enough bars? Enter the following, are there enough bars? Why would I need to know whether there was enough bars? Well, one reason why you might need to know if there was enough bars, because remember in the SMA, in what we said, we're going to use a period of 20. Well, if we're going to look at the previous 20 bars worth of information, there has to be at least 20 bars on our chart. Otherwise, we're going to have problems, right? There's no bar in the values, in the properties down here that we've exposed. Remember, we exposed our custom plot and custom plot 2. We're going to say that this custom plot is the SMA. And that is going to be the average price of the last 14 bars. Got to have 14 bars. If I only got 7, I can't get the average price of 14. That would cause an error in this particular script. So what it's telling us is do not calculate if we don't have enough bars. If the current bar, new word, that just means the current bar that we're on. So now, a couple more explanations here. Current bar, we have a bars array. We have bars on our chart, right? We have bars and we have a count. We have a certain number of bars on our chart. If I come back to the chart and I squinch this up, wherever this chart starts from, there's a certain number of bars from the beginning to the end. It starts from bar 0 and it goes to the last bar on the chart. We just want to make sure that I know I'm going off. This is an unscripted thing. We're just learning as we go, right? So current bar. If we don't know what current bar is, we come up here to the top. Let's open this in another tab. Let's search. Control, where I just pasted that in there and say search. Okay, what did I do here? I held the control key down and clicked on that. That opens NinjaTrader in another tab. That way I can come back to where I was, still have another tab up here, and close that, just in case you were unfamiliar with that quick tip. So current bar, search. You know, if I wanted to see what this meant, this is a great tool. We type in the name, we search for it, and then we have to be able to read. Now, this is kind of why I'm putting together this particular video. Is I'm glad I found this, is now we'll be able to explain what it is that you're reading. Should have probably came here first. So we'll just introduce them one at a time, right? We copy and paste. If the current bar is less than our period, right? Less than our period, we've got that defined. We've got to make sure that this is spelled exactly the same way that this is, but that's all we're doing down here is we're using the value that we've assigned here into this variable right here. And this is an internal. If I hover over any particular object, the AutoSense will kind of tell me a little about what this is. This is a NinjaScript bag, a number representing the current bar in a bars object that the on bar update method in the indicator or strategy is currently processing. Currently processing the current bar. That's going to provide me an integer, 0 to however many bars are on the chart. All we're saying is if I'm on 0, which is less than 20, don't return and don't do anything below this point. Now we're coming back to our help guide. So to calculate the 20 period moving average, you need a minimum of 20 bars of data. We just said that. Against period, enter the following code. Well, let's just do it that way. I don't like to read anyway. You don't like to read, but that's the only way you're going to learn. Okay, so this is saying get the sum of price over the specified period. So they're declaring a double, right? Meaning I can have a decimal point. An integer would not have a decimal point. A Boolean would be a true-false type statement. Integer. That's why we created this as an integer, so that we could compare the two. Okay, and now we're saying this might be a little more difficult. We're getting into definitely some intermediate features here, but we're saying that, wow, why would you be doing it this way? I would do this different. This is saying that I'm going to declare an integer here of bars ago, and I'm going to make it equal to 0 to start. I could start off and make this equal to whatever I want, but we're going to start off declaring just like this, sum 0. We did the same thing here, integer bar 0, but now we're going to say that for this bar 0 equals 0, 2 bars ago is less than period. So I'm going to go from 0 to, it's got to be less than period. So I'm going to go to 19. for bars that go 0 to 19, do this. When I'm done, do this. Now, this is just saying for bars equals 0, then I'm gonna say the sum 0 equals 0 plus input bars ago. Input. Okay, we could use close, we could use open, we could use another type of value here. Now, why wouldn't I put, I guess your first question would be, why wouldn't you use close if I'm calculating the moving average of the close? And because if we come back, the strange thing, not strange, just something to be aware of. Okay, the data series input series. Remember, input, we were looking at input 0. Now, if we come into our indicators and we come to the properties and we look at the data series that it's applied to, this is applied to the end, this is applied to that chart, to the price type close. So in this case, if I were to use close or input, it would mean the same thing. But I could change that to read that from any of these values of that bar for that series, right? So that's why they're using input, in case you would come in and you would change how you want to look at it. Let's say we wanted to look at it at median or weighted or typical, or you want to look at it in another way other than the last close of the bar. So in this case, since that's marked close, that's what we would be using. If it was high, if it was typical, this is how we can transfer that information into this sum. All we're doing here is saying, all we're doing is summing up the close. I mean, we're saying input, but in this case, I showed you why that's the close of the last 20 bars, starting from 0. Close, then all I have to do here is say, we'll say my custom plot 1, right? And for the current bar, that's just saying the current bar, I'm going to assign a value. And I'm going to say that it's going to be the sum divided by the period. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say period 2, period. We're making some changes. Okay. And then we're going to say 550. I'm going to put a 20 and a 50 period moving average on here. I'm going to make one orange and I'm going to make this one white for the background. Okay. Now down here at the bottom, period. We got to make sure that everywhere we had period, that we have to change that code. So now I've added 2 periods, and now I've got to pick which one's the biggest, right? So here, what I'm probably going to want to do is I'm going to want to create something, create a new period. And I can do this because this is lowercase and not uppercase, and we are case sensitive in C# or in NinjaScript. So I'm going to say this period is equal to. Now, some internal things we can do is we can go math. We're going to do some math here. And we're going to click dot, and this is going to be IntelliSense, and it's going to tell me all of the internal functions that are associated with this math here. And this math here is going to be a system.math. It's just internal classes of C# that NinjaTrader automatically allows us to use. Has loaded in the background. Now I want the maximum value. I'm looking to get the maximum value between period 1 and period 2. Now, the nice thing about this are kind of a max of max. I want the max. And then if it's a method, so it wants something here, and now it's saying it wants the value 1, value 2. See, double, value 1, double. So if I just type in here, period 1, comma, period 2, I now have the maximum value between the two, and I want to make sure that here, I change this to the slower, so that I'm going to return if I'm not lower than this. Okay, and the reason I'm pausing here is I hate inefficiency. And I see it right here in my code. In every bar, I'm going to create a new integer, and I'm going to go out and do this. And I don't need to do that, right? I need to think ahead of time. What you need to think about is I only need this once. I need it in the very beginning. I need to know the max of this and this so that I can use it in my script later. I don't need to calculate it each and every tick or each and every bar or each and every anything, just like this crap down here. We'll get to that later. So down up here, in the very beginning, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, give me a private variable I can work with. And let's call it period. Excuse me. And let's make it an integer. And let's call it period. And I'm just going to initialize it to to 0 to begin with. I mean, I could leave it blank, but I prefer giving everything up here. Doesn't matter. I mean, I'm being hypocritical because I'm doing it here and I'm not doing it here, but there's reasons why there's reasons behind that madness. Okay. What did we just do? We declared a period of 0. Okay, so now I can use this period anywhere in my script I want. I can assign it to a different value. I can do whatever I want with it. I can manipulate it. I can use it just by using that name right there. But the next time that this script is refreshed and or starts again, it is always going to reset itself to 0 and then do whatever it's told to do. Difference being this up here always going to reset itself to 0, right? This down here, even though we've made this 20 as our default, because we're putting it and adding it to our properties down here, we're serializing this, meaning that if we change it, the next time that it opens, just because in the script here it says 20, doesn't mean that it won't be 50 if 50 is what was set in your user interface, in your indicator properties, and you change that. So I come back down here and now I don't need to declare that. Instead of every time I go through having a new integer, I'm just going to create one integer in the beginning, and I'm going to assign its value. Only I'm not going to do it here. We're going to come up here and because I've assigned them here in state default, I might as well right here in the beginning of everything, because this isn't a series and I don't need a value on every single bar. I just need to assign it one time and I'm done. So this is going to execute one time and it's done. And now I can use that down here or anywhere in my script, and it's only executed once. Okay, so now we're coming down and we're saying is less than period. And I'm just changing this around, and I'm hoping that you can, those of you that this is way too slow for are going to understand. I'm hoping the newbies catch on to this. This is what this is for. If I change this to period, I'm now going from 0 to my highest period, right? Now, I am just going to keep this inefficient loop down here. But what I want to do is I want to calculate both of them so that I can just do it once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I've got a sum of 1 and a sum of 2. I'm going to calculate both in this one, but I've got to use the biggest. So I can't, once I get past the smallest, I can't use it anymore for the smallest, but I got to keep track of 2. So bear with me, see if we can make this happen. So now we're looking at bars ago, right? So we're going to say if my bars ago is less than period 1, I'm going to sum up period 1's values. And at the same time, I'm going to sum up period 2's values. So here we'll call this period 2, sum of 2, and then all we got to do, crap. Undo is your friend. And we're just copying and pasting that up here, and then we're going to come over and say sum of 1, sum of 1. So all I've done is use the same loop to say go to 0 to the max that I have in those two variables. And if it's still within the first variable, calculate the sum of that. So calculate the sum of 20. But this code will only execute for the first 20 bars. Or whatever my period is set to. And it's not just period 1 when we say 20, because again, you're not going to know what these variables are going to end up because you can change them in the indicator properties. So let's come on back down here. We've got this, right? Sum of 1 on, get the sum of prices over the specified period. We did that. And now all we have to do is copy our custom plot to custom plot 2. Oops. And these have to be changed to the sum of 2 and the sum of 1, right? We're just using those variables. We just created this double, assigned it 0, and now we're looping through, and this is just a way that they've looped through all of the values to get the sum. We take the sum, we divide it by the period that we're looking at. I hope some of you caught that. Right? We had to change those because we were looking at more. Custom plot 1. Now, one thing I did not do, hope some of you were screaming at me. right? Didn't notice that. But when we do change the name of things, we've got to make sure that we go through all of our code and add those. We hadn't added a period. We didn't add our serialization of our period 2. We can't assign something up here in state default. Or would have gotten an error that is not. You can't assign something that we haven't assigned somewhere else. I mean, that we haven't at least given a public or private declaration to. Okay, so I think that's our exposed values, custom. I think we're done. Now, let's come here and say region on bar update. Okay. Now, let's collapse all of that stuff. Now, this stuff down here. Let's talk about this for a second. NinjaScript generated code, neither change nor remove. Okay, you don't want to remove or anything this, but this is being automatically, everything below this point is being automatically generated by NinjaTrader every time excuse me, every time you compile the script. And what it's doing, remember that we did some properties up here and we set those properties, and what this is doing is it's creating some internal stuff to itself so that this can be used in other scripts. And it's used in other indicators by using this information, and it's used in market analyzer columns by using this, and it's used in strategies like this. Now, I haven't compiled yet, but you can see that I need to compile before we talk about this, Dunkirk, because you're going to notice how okay. It's already changed. We only had one period before. Now we've got both of our periods. So remember here, we said we were using this NinjaScript property just in between these brackets. If we just got rid of that, it would not appear here, meaning that if we're going to use this in another indicator, we've got to tell the other indicator, the script, we got to tell it what periods we're using. Otherwise, how would it know? Otherwise, how would it know what to use to calculate all of that? So those are user inputs that must be used, or it's always going to use the default that you had set, which was, what, 2050? In any case, this is probably getting a little too deep in that. Don't worry about all of this. This is automatically generated for you and is how other scripts are actually accessing this one in its basic simplicity form. So we just okay, we've got that line there. I tend to like trying to clean my code up. I'm maybe even a little too anal when it comes to things like that. Now, using declarations we didn't talk about at the top, but this is something that, again, without wanting to get into classes and namespaces and all of that, let's not even worry about any of this until we get to it. This was created for us automatically. Forget about it. Forget about it till you need it. Okay, so down here at the bottom, we can always tell if the code has been modified from the last time that we compiled, meaning I just did that without even thinking. But if we look at all of these icons coming across the top, or maybe even easier for some of you, if we right click, we see F5 compile. F5 and F5 reload Ninja script. It is. And in the editor, that's how we compile as well. So if I say compile, it's going to go through and compile all of these indicators into a nice little usable DLL. I'm not going to go into that either. Okay, so I'm not sure if you just heard it, but I did that. I saw a little icon down here saying it was working, and then I heard a little bell ring announcement saying it was done and compiled. If it wouldn't have compiled, if something would have been wrong, if I would have come up here and I would have, let's just say, forgot to change that to period 2 because I renamed all of that stuff and I tried to compile, I'm going to get an error message. I might even get bunches of error messages, but your error messages are all going to be located here at the bottom. Now, we talked about hovering over something and being able to see what it was, right? It's our input series. That's the period. That's an int, an integer that we declared up here to take the maximum of our period 1 and our period 2. Hope I'm not through too much. But this is telling me the name period. We got to read again. The name period does not exist. Does not exist. What do you mean name period? This is telling me the line number that I'm having a problem with. Wouldn't worry about the column so much, but if I double click this, it takes me right to that line and put the cursor right on the variable that it's having a problem with. Oh, that's right. I forgot to rename that, right? Or whatever. If you have a problem, that's definitely going to help. Now, you kind of may have to understand what that problem might be. Okay, so we're just waiting for this to pause. Now, I'm going to come back to the chart, and we're going to go into the indicator properties. Now, I went back to the chart, and because the SMA is set up that way, I can left click on that plot. And then you can see all the dots. This is our script. This is the SMA, right? If I double click that when it's selected, it automatically brings up the indicator properties, the all indicator, right? Now, what did we just create? We just created a script called my custom script. So I got to scroll all the way down here. Uh-oh. We renamed that, didn't we? So if I say cancel, remember when we did that and I just didn't change it back? If we went to on state change, I named it this. But because I've got an A and because I renamed it here, it shows up different. Now, it's still going to show up here. It's still going to show up. This is the odd thing, and this is why you probably don't want to do this because you're going to confuse yourself. In the editor, it's still going to show up as the class name. In the indicator drop down, it's going to show up as whatever name you stick here. And that has created a lot of confusion in the past. So I would just advise you, and unless you don't want to for some reason, to keep them both the same. So now we're just waiting for that to compile. I heard my little thing. I am going to real quick just get rid of this. And you always probably want to recompile your chart after you've changed anything in NinjaScript. But I'm going to come back here. I'm going to remove this. And then we're going to go down to my custom indicator. My custom indicator. And 20, 50, that was the only properties, period 1, period 2. Remember, we said we use the input, but we could change that to something if we wanted. We set the bar close up there at the top. I mean, I guess I could. How am I going to do this? I'm going to, oh, no. I do it like this. Sorry. My custom indicator, 20, 50. Remember that all this was set up for us on bar close. Is overlay is in here somewhere. Oh, well, actually, the true false statement here sets this to same as input series. If you say is overlay false, then this will be in a new panel. Display in data box. We're not going to talk about displacement. Auto scale, that can be set up in our properties over here as well. What we can do in the state terminated, excuse me, state defaults. If I type in this, this means this script. Simple enough. If I put the dot here, I'm going to get all kinds of possible access to possible commands per se. Is auto scale. So all I typed in was is, and it automatically comes up and gives me that. Now, be careful with this. I mean, you do want to go back to the help guide and see the commands that are available. And I'm sure that if I went over here and we just opened another tab, came over here and said change, and we come down to on state change, we can see the different kinds of defaults. It will also tell us what we should and cannot. We were talking about add plots and data series, but what we were doing was we were looking at the indicator properties, and there's an is auto scale, right? And in the properties, it was set to true, and if I want that set to false, I could do that here. And then I tend to put it I would probably tend to put it up here. And I tend to keep mine off. And the reason for that is, again, depending on what you're looking at. Now, if you're just looking at an SMA of 20 or 50, it probably doesn't matter. But what if you were looking at the SMA of a 250? It might be well off the chart that you're looking at. Now, auto scale means no matter what price levels those plots are at, it's going to rescale your chart so that you can see them. Meaning, if I come back up here and right now we're at 15,280 and something was showing a price at 1,500, it's going to adjust this price scale so that you can see all of the bars and that price marker at the same time. So that's what that means. Now let's go back here and get to why we went off on that tangent anyway. Okay, again, we're not going to talk about displacement, price markers. All of this we set up right here. Now, this, let's talk about this. Even though this isn't something, it is something we can do in our script, but we want to be aware of this. Now, visible. We haven't even added. Oh, this is the SMA. God dang. Why? Oh, why? I think we're going to see the same thing, only we're going to see 2 periods, right? Okay, 2 periods. It is all the same information. We were talking about visible. Now, if we put this, let's go ahead and put this on the chart. Now, if I put a 20 SMA on this chart, I'm going to guarantee that it's going to follow the same orange line. And if we want to do that just for shits and grins, let's come down here and make this a different color. Make it a little bigger so that it overlays that. Oh my. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. See, the green now overlays what we had. So we're just going to get rid of that because that's just what we created. Simple enough. In less than an hour, you've created your first indicator. Right? The orange is our 20. The white is our 50. And those are moving averages. Okay, so we've created our first indicator, and it wasn't so bad. We did that in probably less than an hour. I don't know how much time this has been recording. Now, there's a lot more that we can do, but I hope that by doing it this way, you understand more of what you're looking at now. You understand that we've got private variables that we're going to use. We never did set our my calculation up to anything. What we could do, let's just do that real quick. Remember that we set up a private variable, right? My calculations. And we declared it in our data loaded. So we could come down here to our on-bar update and say that now this isn't going to plot or anything, but we've got my calculation. This is nothing different. My calculation. Instead of doing it this way, why don't we just do this? How about we say that we're going to take our 50 moving average minus our 20 moving average and track the price range of that value. So I just pasted a couple things here. My 50 right now is plot 2. Just get rid of that. I want to take the last value of my 50 and minus that from the 20, and I'm going to get a range of that's going to give me the range between those two. It's going to be positive or negative depending on which is above or which is below. And I'm going to store that into my calculation. And now later I can go back into the script and I can access what this value was on any given bar. And that's why I would use a series there and not a double. If I didn't need to know the value of this calculation on every given bar going back historically, well, then it would be no different than the variable that we set up here for period, right? I mean, we could just keep changing that. We could say my value, and down here you say my value equals this. If you didn't need to know what it was 50 bars ago and you just needed to know that at the end of this bar, Don't use a series for that. Just use a simple variable, a double, a float, whatever it is that you need for whatever it is that you're working with. So this is the basics of creating an indicator. I might have gone a little beyond the basics, and I know that anybody that's created anything before will not want to sit through this, because this would have been extremely boring for them. Although, if you're new, or if you didn't understand maybe some of these other things, hopefully this helped. Maybe I'll continue on. There's a lot of ideas I've got in this, but I really need to know if this is being beneficial to anybody. How many people watch this? Give me a, I'm not one of those for thumbs up and all that crap. I don't really care. What I do care is that this was helpful. And if it wasn't, it's a waste of my time, and I've got much better things I can be doing. Okay, guys, sorry for the ranting there at the end. Hopefully you learned something. Let me know. Have a great day.